What happens to the G.I. Joes when they're injured in the field and need treatment? Who does the team turn to ensure they'll come home from a mission? And who paved the way for lifeline, evac, stretcher, and sideswipe? Doc, of course. So let's talk about him. But before we do, let me say thank you for watching JLS Comics, whether you've been with me for a while or it's your first time here. If you do enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe and share the video so you and your friends don't miss the content I upload every few days, just like this. Let's jump into the story. Carl Greer was born and raised in Concord, Massachusetts, the same Concord where a conflict in April of 1775 started the American Revolutionary War. Action Force Doc is from Kingston, Jamaica. Carl excelled in academia, graduating high school in Concord, and then went on to Harvard Medical School just a few towns away. In fact, it's the Harvard Square stop on the T in Cambridge, just outside of Boston. Once graduating as an MD, Carl did his residency at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, and similar to Lifeline and per the Geneva Convention rules on medical and combat personnel, Carl is a devout pacifist, sworn to save lives and not take them. As his V1 file card says, Carl hoped for a guarantee of G.I. Joe assignment upon establishment, and he was told flatly that the Army made no such deals. Doc enlisted anyway and achieved his goal through ordinary channels. Graduated airborne school, mountaineering school, and desert training school. And all of this training, skill, and education paid off as it earned him a spot on the G.I. Joe team early on as the resident medic assigned the codename Doc, and just like Snowjob, Doc first appeared in 1983's 11th issue of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero by Larry Hama. He was featured right on the cover, riding on the polar battle bear along with Snowjob while being shot at from the sky by a Viper on a glider. As it turns out, Doc was critical to this mission. First, he tended to Steeler, Grand Slam, and Short Fuse, who'd been injured in the firefight. Then Snake Eyes pointed an Uzi at his face as he tried to treat him. Not happening. You're not getting that mask off, sir. Later, it was Doc who discovered Cobra's plague toxin plans and who went out in pursuit of the antidote with Snake Eyes and Snowjob. As they ran into Destro for the first time, Doc was the first Joe ever in the comics to fire something at Destro. Well, it wasn't a bullet, it was actually a snowball. Doc's the one who gave Cobra the fake plutonium from the Alaskan nuclear power plant in exchange for the plague toxin antidote. What he actually gave them was tetanus booster. And highlights of this issue were replayed in G.I. Joe Yearbook #1. In issue 13, Doc was part of the extraction team with Scarlet, Torpedo, Grunt, and Rock and Roll to go get Stalker, Gung-Ho, and Breaker out of Sierra Gordo in South America. He was Bravo team with Torpedo. Their primary mission was to recon a Cobra bunker at the bottom of a river and then meet up with those trapped in-country and help them get to the airfield where Alpha Team would be waiting. Hawk was shot by Cobra Commander at the end of the battle in Washington, D.C., and when Wild Bill and Doc swooped in for a medevac, Hawk was lying face down in the middle of the street. The ballistic nylon vest under his uniform helped, but he had serious internal bleeding. As the helo landed, Doc immediately took control of the scene. He was yelling at Clutch and told Scarlet to take a walk. He needed room to work. Doc consoled Gung-Ho after Gung-Ho smashed a Shelby GT Cobra with his hands and the hood that Hawk had a SWAT vest on with extra ballistic layers, and he'd be fine but was going to be transported to Bethesda Hospital. So they strapped the stretcher to the skids of Wild Bill's Dragonfly and took him away. 19 is the issue where Snowjob was complaining to Doc about how Gung-Ho switches his Cajun accent on and off all the time, so Doc hit him back with medical terminology in his own dialect, to which Snowjob said, "I give up." Classic Hama humor. They'd also managed to capture Major Blood and Scarface. On escape, Blood punched out Doc, shot General Flag and Scarface, and stole the Baroness. During a later mission in the Everglades where they ran into Zartan for the first time, Doc was in the gunner seat of Wild Bill's Dragonfly. They had to bring Deep Six back to the G.I. Joe's freighter called the Jane for medical care after he was shot by Destro during the Whale vs. Rattler duel. In issue 30, Doc was with Wild Bill at McGuire Air Base when Zartan infiltrated, disguised as Hawk. It was Doc who was first surprised that he called Wild Bill Trooper instead of using his codename as he normally would. 6 issues later, Doc was with Cutter and Deep Six on the Jane in the South Atlantic Ocean on heavy seas. Despite that, Doc made them all hot chocolate, but Cutter said he never touches the stuff. After numerous strafing runs by Cobra Rattlers, the ship was badly damaged and on fire with both the missile launcher and the Gatling gun inoperable. So Doc actually decided to hold the barrel of the Gatling gun to aim it manually, and it worked, but the Rattler, in a fiery, smoking mass of twisted metal, smashed into the freighter, destroying it. Luckily, Torpedo and Snowjob and the Whale found them, all in a life raft, just before the USS Flag showed up for the first time to rescue them all. In issue 40, after the battle on the battle platform, the Pentagon ordered a tactical nuclear strike on Cobra's underwater base. It was Doc who said they could use conventional weapons instead and still do as much damage, but without the after effects. And so they did, which ruptured a fault line and gave rise to Cobra Island, a major after effect. Doc was on the whale with a team who rescued the fake ripcord from the new Cobra Island. And I say fake because he had switched places with Zartan. Well, Zartan switched places with him. Doc gave him pain meds, and fake ripcord became delirious, and he had to knock him out for the ride home. And during that ride home, Doc was the first to see him change into Zartan, but Doc thought it was just his eyeglass prescription. Now back at sickbay, Doc continued to treat fake ripcord, but he was again alarmed when the blood sample he drew didn't match ripcord's file. And just as he made the discovery, Zartan changed into Snake Eyes and knocked out Doc with a heel palm strike to the face. Doc said that the DNA was inhuman, almost like a chameleon, but he said this as a fake Doc stood in front of him, which was, you guessed it, Zartan. The mission that followed was an invasion of Springfield to rescue the real ripcord, and for that mission, Doc was on the security team to take the airfield and then later block all the roads in and out of town. For Cobra Civil War, Doc was with Hawk's weapons team, tasked with taking out the main airfield defenses. Duke's security team was to back them up while the engineer team on the Whale took out the Aspen placements at the end of the runway, a runway critical to the success of the operation. Wild Bill and Lift Ticket dropped them off just as Lift Ticket's security team Tomahawk was strafed by a Cobra Mamba. Doc immediately took to caring for Lift Ticket and Crazy Legs, who needed immediate evac while Lifeline treated Breaker's arm. When Wild Bill crashed at the east end of the runway, it was up to Lifeline and Doc to pull him out of the wreckage. Wild Bill's had a lot of practice at crashing and burning, Lifeline, Doc said as he dragged his wounded brother right out of the cockpit. And at the end of the conflict, Lifeline and Doc were walking stretchers to the choppers on the beach when Lady J and Zorana got into their famous wrestling fight. We also later see Doc hanging out with Mutt in a bandaged junkyard as they watched the Battle Force 2000 training exercises at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. Later, both Doc and Lifeline were treating Scarlet, who was now in a coma after a bullet hit the dome of her skull at an oblique angle. She was alive because the angle caused the bullet to deflect instead of penetrate. As they were about to hand her off to a brain trauma team on the tarmac of JFK Airport, they got a call to assist at the Cobra consulate. They were the only ones who could provide air support to Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, who were trapped on the roof there. Doc reminded them that if Scarlet came out of her coma and she learned that they let Snake Eyes die because of her, well, that's all he had to say, because they took off with Doc and the team in the back, Scarlet's structure locked in. Lift Ticket actually barrel rolled the Tomahawk to catch Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, who were in a free fall right off the roof of the building. It was a crazy maneuver. Okay, here comes the sad part. Lieutenant Falcon had a team in the desert of Trucial Abysmia, somewhere in the Middle East, tasked with finding and taking out the terradromes in the area. But the team was overwhelmed and surrounded by Zaymont and Tomax's forces. The twins beat up Duke and then shoved Doc and the Joe team in a ravine while Zaymont called Cobra Commander to see what to do with their captives. Cobra Commander said, "Get rid of them," meaning let them go, but they thought it meant kill them. The twins didn't want to get their hands dirty, but a Saw Viper stepped up and said he would do it. In the ravine, Doc peeked up over the edge of the wall as it sounded like Cobra was leaving, and when he peered over the edge, he saw boots. Saw Viper boots. And that's when the Saw Viper pointed his MG right at Doc's face and fired. Doc tumbled backwards, lifeless. He was dead. But the Saw Viper wasn't done. He also murdered Crankcase, Quicksilver, Crazy Legs, Heavy Metal, Thunder, and Breaker. It was one of the issues which was a huge turning point for the fandom, bringing real-world consequences and the horrors of war to G.I. Joe. In a flashback in issue 144, it's revealed that Doc was on the medevac chopper with Wild Bill after the chopper, where Snake Eyes lost his face and his voice, crashed. Snake Eyes wanted to Charlie Mike, but Doc said, "The man's vocal cords are damaged and he's got third-degree burns and major tissue damage to his entire head. He should be in shock. And if we don't get him to a hospital now, they'll never be able to repair the damage." Later, when Scarlet awoke, Doc told her that Snake Eyes went on to save the hostage with her throwing stars and her knife. Many years later, Doc was part of a memorial issue for all the deceased G.I. Joes. He was right on the cover with the entire lot of heroes, and in the issue, Duke mentioned to Stalker that Doc is buried in the same section of Arlington National Cemetery as General Flagg. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Greer, were at their son's gravestone when they walked up. Mrs. Greer said she blamed and hated Duke for a long time, until she learned just how much the team meant to Carl, and they all hugged with understanding and remembrance of Carl, the fallen Doc, together. We also had Carla Greer, sometimes just a reimagined version of Doc like in G.I. Joe Reloaded, Other times, she's Carl's niece who took on this codename to honor her fallen uncle. Both Docs were together in Aubrey Sitterson's alternate universe G.I. Joe series in 2016, and together they tried to build a device which would locate and detect an alien race known as Dire Race. In G.I. Joe the movie, male Doc was taking care of Bazooka, and at the end it was Doc that told everyone that Duke didn't die, that he was just in a coma. Doc appeared quite a bit in the Sunbow animated series as well, primarily in the miniseries in Season 1 as Lifeline took over medical duties for Season 2. As I mentioned earlier, Doc was in G.I. Joe Yearbook number 1, and this issue, while talking about the new ongoing Season 1, featured an image of Doc and Snowjob on the polar battle bear. Doc was in the first miniseries called The Mass Device. When Duke escapes from Cobra, but then crashed, Doc showed up in a medical chopper to evacuate him and take him back for treatment, and later he debriefed Duke and helped to recover his memories in Part 5. He was also in the second miniseries called The Revenge of Cobra. For Season 1, he made a quick cameo on Space Station Delta in the last part of the Pyramid of Darkness. Doc showed up at headquarters in Countdown for Zartan, where he was flying in the Skyhawk and later in a Dragonfly. He was in Memories of Mara and was working at the hospital in There's No Place Like Springfield. Doc also got his own PSA, warning kids not to self-medicate. Doc's first action figure was released in 1983, packaged with a giant flare launcher and a stretcher. Doc was in the Polar Battle Bear commercial during this time as well, along with his teammate Snowjob. In Argentina, Plastorama released Carl with the codename SOS. In 83, Doc came with Gung Ho and Airborne in a 3-pack set exclusive to JCPenney. He was later reissued in the Operation Freedom and Get Your Gear mail-away offers. 2007 gave us Carl's niece Carla as Doc, her first figure. This Doc was also from Concord, Mass., but she graduated from Wayne State University and did her residency in Detroit, Michigan, and went on to the Army Medical Department and completed Officer Advanced School. She was boxed in a set for a Joe convention, and the set was called Tanks for the Memories. The 2008 male version of Doc was only available by responding to the Operation Rescue Doc mail-away offer. 2010 Doc was Bright Red, a Toys R Us exclusive, and then 2016 Doc was Lady Doc, Carla Greer. And so that's the story of G.I. Joe's first medic, the man known as Doc. For now, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.